I feel like every sports writer kind of has this story about like the first time you sort of thought you wanted to do like sports writing and sports journalism. So I wanted to ask like when that moment was for you.
When I was in high school, I actually wrote for the Abilene Reporter News and the San Angelo Standard Times, and I wrote sports for both of them. But when I came to Texas in '60, during the summer they would be doing the summer Texan. That was a big deal for us in those days. It came out just once in the last part of the summer. As the summer closed, we put out what was called the Summer Texan. It was more of a wrap up of how the summer had gone, looking to the fall. And fortunately, in sports, we had a lot of good things we could write about because at that time, Coach Royal was just getting going good, and people were really excited about what was going on with football. And at that time, most of our sports were really good. We were really blessed with some good coaches, and it was a smaller world then. It just was. We had the opportunity to do a lot of different things. And as a member of the Texan staff, I was fortunate enough to be able to go beyond just dealing with sports writing and do a lot more things in other parts of journalism as well. And because of my beginnings working in the newspaper area as a kid, that really became kind of the direction I wanted to go. I wanted to go into journalism. In fact, I have many times said, you know, when I die, I want to be buried as a journalist. Everybody said, well, you're going to write books, and I did. And more and more times things would come up about other things. And I felt that there was a badge of honor of being a journalist. I believed in the things that the Tower said about you shall know the truth and the truth will make you free. I believed in those things and what we could stand for if we were journalists. And I was really blessed with working with a lot of good people, many of whom are already inducted into the Hall of Fame, and some of whom are going in both as instructors and people that we worked with there. The Texan became part of my heart, and the side part of that would be it was my soul, because those two things linked me to what I loved. I loved writing. I loved the ability to tell a story. I felt that if I could tell a story and make a difference for somebody, it would make a difference in a life. And that's the way I got into writing books. When I first started to do a book, I wanted to write a book that would make a difference in somebody's life. After going to UT and getting my degree here, I was able to move on into writing for the American Statesman. The window for me on the Texan, and the memory that I have of that more than anything, is the window of time in 1963, in the fall of 1963, because it kind of comprised everything that you'd ever want to be as a young journalist. For me, it began just a few months earlier in 1962, when Lyndon Johnson was our vice president, and he came down to Brooke Medical Center to get his heart checked. He had some heart trouble, and so he came to Brooke Medical Center in San Antonio. And I called Liz Carpenter, who was then the press secretary for Mrs. Johnson, and said, you know, I write for the Daily Texan. I'm the student newspaper, and, you know, big, brave kid. So I called and I said, I'd like to go with the president, or the vice president at the time, on this trip to San Antonio. And she said, well, let me check and see what we've got. And so she checked and found out that they did have some space. And so they allowed me to travel with the presidential press corps, or vice presidential press corps as it was. Little would I know that in a few months, everything would change as far as we were all concerned. Because the Sunday after the president was assassinated, we did come out with a bulletin edition of the Daily Texan. And I was fortunate enough, because I'd made that trip with now President Johnson, I had been able to make that trip with him. So I got the assignment of writing the feature story for the front page for the Texan of the new president. And he was the first Texan to become president. I don't think any of us will ever forget where we were and what we did the moment that we learned that President Kennedy had died. I can remember walking into the Texan offices, and I can remember it as if it were today, and looking at the old black and white TV that was over in the corner, and seeing Walter Cronkite with that famous pose of the glasses coming off and reading and saying the notice that the president had died. A few days later, Texas and Texas A&M played a game where the national championship in college football was on the line. Texas had not won a national championship in college football. In that moment of time, in those less than a week, really, my life changed. All of our lives changed. The world changed. That nothing would ever be the same. Looking back at all of the things that helped me as far as being able to make a transition from writing for the newspaper and writing for the Texan and writing for all of it was the combination of the teaching that I had had and the ability for the instructors, professors and instructors who were really good and were really solid in what they taught us. They did teach us how to write. They taught us how to write concisely. You learn to write like an AP writer, which was easy. That made it easy for me when I went to work for AP. I had covered Texas athletics. I'd covered baseball. And you think of the legends that I had a chance to be around in sports. I was given the opportunity to cover the Rogers Hornsby's funeral. Rogers Hornsby was a great, great professional baseball player. And I covered his funeral simply because I called somebody and said, you know what, I want to do this. I want to write a story for the Daily Texan.